Stay tuned because I'll be showing you my 10 favorite images from classic metal album covers, including discussion on the featured artists, as well as details on how the cover came to be, and I'll throw in some other fun stuff just for good measure. Should be a good time. So a couple things I should mention before we begin. First is that this top 10 is limited to what I have on vinyl specifically. So if I don't name someone you might have suspected as being here, that might be one of the reasons why. The other reason might be that these choices for album covers are my own. Maybe you like a different cover from the same artist, which is fine, but might not be reflected in my choices. You know, subjectivity, personal taste, all of that. As always, keep that in mind when you hit the comments section. All right, let's do this. At number 10 is the cover of the second studio album from American death thrash band Possessed. This is Beyond the Gates with artwork by Ed Repka. So Repka has done album covers for numerous metal bands, especially of the thrash and death varieties. Memorable ones include Megadeth, Violence, Death, and Massacre. I mean, his list is pretty extensive. I believe he has over 100 covers for metal bands alone. Funny enough, Repka's not really a metal fan. He actually prefers punk and has done covers for those bands as well, such as the Circle Jerks and No FX. Repka's first album cover of note was for the 1985 Here Lies Venom box set, which I've shown before on this channel. In fact, it's right behind me, way back there. But the cover that was Repka's big break was definitely Megadeth's Peace Sells But Who's Buying back in 1986. After that, he went on to do cover after cover after cover after cover, including this one at number 10. Oh, and I have to mention the weird way this thing opens up to reveal a bigger art piece inside. Does this crazy thing here. There we go. It is both magnificent and unwieldy. Also, I know there are Repka covers that are far more elaborate than this one, but this really is a favorite of mine. It has been for quite a while, simply for its simplistic design. And yeah, maybe the weird fold-out cover too. Anyways, this is Beyond the Gates by Possessed with cover art by Ed Repka. Coming in at number 9 is the cover of the debut studio album from American thrash band Death Angel. This is The Ultraviolence with artwork by Sam Hafner. So, not much out there about this artist, really, although he did do the cover art for Death Angel's follow-up album, Frolic Through the Park, as well as a collaboration on the cover for Vane's debut album, No Respect. In all cases, it does seem that Hafner worked with a photographer named Mark Lealoha, who is much better documented and has done photography for such acts as Violence, Forbidden, Mordred, and Testament, incidentally, all Bay Area bands. I do know that Vane and Death Angel have another connection, though, in singer Davey Vane, because he did produce The Ultraviolence, so perhaps Hafner was also a resident of the Bay Area. Lealoha was from San Francisco back then, so it definitely makes some sense. Anyways, this is The Ultraviolence by Death Angel at number 9, with cover art by Sam Hafner. At number 8 is the cover of the third studio album from British hard rock band Def Leppard. This is Pyromania, with artwork by Bernard Godinas. So the band and management wanted art for the cover that wasn't typical heavy metal imagery. So they brought in graphic artist Andy Airfix, and he did a sketch. Then they brought in Godinas to paint it. Back then, Godinas specialized in futuristic designs, which would qualify him as an artist who gave the band a cover image that hadn't already been done before, at least in the genre. Kind of in the same vein as Hypnosis, but with more of a commercial gloss to it. And I mentioned Hypnosis because that art group was used for Def Leppard's previous album, High and Dry. I don't know, maybe this time they wanted something similar, but also different, but more polished, less weird, who knows. And it doesn't seem like Godinas did a lot of album covers outside of this one, as well as a comp for Tangerine Dream back in 1987. Aside from those, his resume does include many media, including sculpture, drawing, photography, and digital art. Even his styles are all over the place, such as fine art, modern, pop, and surrealism, to name a few. Pretty versatile guy. Anyways, this is Pyromania by Def Leppard, with cover art by Bernard Godinas. Coming in at number 7 is the cover of the second studio album from international hard rock band Rainbow. This is Rising, with artwork by Ken Kelly. Of course, metal fans know Kelly for his prominent artwork on a number of Manowar covers, such as Fighting the World, Kings of Metal, The Triumph of Steel, and pretty much everything after that for them. I mean, he might as well have been Manowar's exclusive artist at that point. Of course, Kelly's work was deeply influenced by Frank Frazetta, whose subjects were likewise dramatic and warrior-based. Kelly also did a couple of noteworthy covers for Kiss, namely Destroyer and Love Gun, but perhaps lesser known is his work for Ace Frehley's Space Invaders solo album, so kinda Kiss-related. As for Rising, guitarist Ritchie Blackmore came up with the design idea, and Kelly pulled from that to create the painting. This was back in 1976 when rainbows didn't exactly mean what they do now. And sadly, Ken Kelly did pass away in 2022, which really stinks because I never got to meet the guy, no matter how many horror conventions I went to. And I went to quite a few of them, by the way. At any rate, he left behind some really incredible work, including this album cover at number 7. So this is Rising by Rainbow, with cover art by Ken Kelly. At number 6 is the cover of the debut full-length album from German thrash band Destruction. This is Infernal Overkill, with artwork by Udo Linke. So some might remember from when I covered this album on the vinyl reacquisition project, I had contacted the artist about the image and got at least a little bit of info because otherwise there isn't a lot on the internet about this guy. This was the only metal album cover he painted. The record company had basically contacted him about doing it, and so he did. After that, he actually lost the original painting through various moves of his, which is simply heartbreaking. Anyways, he did do hardcore punk covers. He did one for Morbid Outburst, as well as Lethal Aggression in the 1980s. And he did a few random covers for other genres, but that pretty much is it for Linke and album covers. However, he is still around and creating some amazingly realistic retro pop art that's definitely worth checking out. Do a search, you'll find it. Anyways, this is Infernal Overkill by Destruction, with cover art by Udo Linke. Coming in at number 5 is the cover of the 5th studio album from British heavy metal band Black Sabbath. This is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, with artwork by Drew Struzan. So in addition to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Struzan also did the cover for Welcome to My Nightmare from Alice Cooper, though he's not primarily known for album covers. Struzan mainly did artwork for a whole lot of movie posters, including those for Blade Runner, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, as well as The Last Crusade, The Thing, the Star Wars prequels, and many others. This also means that he did the art on many of their respective soundtrack album covers, so maybe back to cover art, inadvertently. If interested, there is a 2013 documentary on Struzan called Drew, the Man Behind the Poster. Some decent interviewees in this one as well, including Ken Kelly, Tim Bradstreet, and Alice Cooper. Given that the guy's worth about $13 million, I'd say he's doing okay for himself with this art thing. Anyways, this is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath by Black Sabbath, with cover art by Drew Struzan. At number 4 is the cover of the 9th studio album from British heavy metal band Judas Priest. This is Screaming for Vengeance, with artwork by Doug Johnson. So Johnson is an illustrator who typically didn't do metal album covers, except for Judas Priest. He did a total of 3 album covers for them. This one, as well as those for Defenders of the Faith and Turbo. Johnson did illustrate album covers for bands in other genres. However, those include Bo Diddley, The Velvet Underground, Ike and Tina Turner, and Leonard Bernstein. Largely, his style is pop art, which is pretty obvious on this cover. I mean, it's definitely an interesting choice of style for a Judas Priest cover. But when you consider past covers from Priest, and Stained Class certainly comes to mind, maybe it's not that strange. Plus, it's a cool image. I mean, Birds of Prey are totally metal. Anyways, this is Screaming for Vengeance by Judas Priest, with cover art by Doug Johnson. Coming in at number 3 is the cover of the 2nd studio album from German thrash band Creator. This is Pleasure to Kill, with artwork by Phil Lavere. So Lavere is no stranger to metal cover art, even though, like Repka, he was more into punk. In addition to Creator, he also did some incredible cover artwork for bands such as Celtic Frost, Death Row, Ex Mortis, and Rage, to mention a few. He was basically the in-house cover artist for Noise Records. If not officially, then definitely in a de facto sense. Leppard is even credited with naming Creator, as well as Rage. The story goes that Leppard told Noise Records boss Carl Walterbach that Creator, spelled with a K, would appeal to American kids, and so they used it. Although this is probably Leppard's most known cover for Creator, he also did others for them, such as Endless Pain, Terrible Certainty, and their Out of the Dark Into the Light EP. There's also a bit of controversy out there regarding Leppard and Noise Records and some contested royalties, but you can look that one up for yourself. It's out there. Anyways, Leppard had also done voiceover work, which he claims pays a lot better. He's also been involved with advertising illustration, photography, animation, cartooning, and web design. He did stop painting back in the late 1980s, but then came back to it in the 2010s. The first band he did a cover for upon his return was the 2014 release of Immortal Legacy by Hyrax, in case you want to check that one out. Also check out his covers for Ex Mortis, which are also fantastic. Anyways, this is Pleasure to Kill by Creator, with cover art by Phil Leppard. At number 2 is the cover of the second full-length album from Danish metal band Merciful Fate. This is Don't Break the Oath, with artwork by Thomas Holm. It should be said that Holm didn't work alone. He collaborated to some degree with Torbjorn Jorgensen, collectively known as Studio Dizjan, or however that's pronounced. In addition to Don't Break the Oath, Holm also did the cover for the band's 9 album, which stylistically makes a whole lot of sense once you compare the two side by side. He also did cover artwork for Denner Sherman's Satan's Tomb EP, as well as their Masters of Evil full-length. I do recall there was some fuss on King's End about his ex-bandmates using Holm's art, as he felt it was too associated with Merciful Fate, as well as King Diamond, the band. Maybe since it was ex-band members, he's got a point, but Holm also did covers for Brainstorm, Torch, Dreadful Relic, Steel Wing, Darkstorm, and most notably the lion's share of covers for Swedish metal band Wolf. So there's that. Speaking of which, definitely check out those Wolf covers. Pretty cool stuff. So this is Don't Break the Oath by Merciful Fate, with cover art by Thomas Holm. And at number 1 is likely one of the oddest and darkly surreal covers through metal cover art. You know it better as the third studio album from American thrash band Slayer. This is Rain and Blood, with artwork by Larry Carroll. So Carroll was an illustrator for a lot of publications, but he's much better known to metal fans for doing the cover art of 4 Slayer albums. This one, as well as South of Heaven, Seasons in the Abyss, and Christ Illusion. I do know that producer Rick Rubin had a hand in facilitating Carroll's contribution to Slayer's covers, but to what degree, not really certain. The cover itself is so iconic that many music websites and magazines have put Rain and Blood in their top 10 and even top 5 lists of the greatest metal album covers ever, including Revolver, Kerrang, Rolling Stone, and many others. One of the things I do dig about this cover is that it's certainly apropos from a content standpoint, but at the same time, it's stylistically different from other metal album covers of the time. I mean, it wasn't simply skulls and pentagrams and fire. It's kind of this weird Boschian nightmare that seems like it was painted by a completely insane person. Again, not typical for its time. Carroll also got into doing sculpture starting in the late 1990s, what he calls table paintings. You can do a search on Google to check those out. Believe me, they are properly strange. I should also mention that Mr. Carroll is no longer with us. He unfortunately died in 2019. So this is Rain and Blood by Slayer, with cover art by Larry Carroll. So a slight departure from what I usually do here, but I had a lot of fun. Hopefully, you did as well. Like a lot of metal fans, I do like to geek out on album details, including the cover art, who did it, and what other cover images they did. Maybe you're the same. Perhaps you'll check further into these artists and their works. Maybe you even have some favorites of your own. Definitely let me know in the comments about your favorite cover art, your favorite artists in and around metal, or any other examples of when art and metal collide. I only covered 10 here, but there are so many others worth mentioning, even in modern day. I mean, you've got Mark Riddick, Ellerin Cantor, Adam Burke, lots of them out there. So yeah, definitely let me know. As to my usual shtick on this channel, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network. For each and every week, I do videos on metal vinyl collecting, I do videos on classic and modern metal in general. If that's of interest, definitely give this video a like. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and share my videos with some of your friends. And of course, thank you for watching, and maybe, just maybe, I'll see you in the next video.